What's going on, Scaling the Wall listeners? Something awesome is going on at FifthWall Solutions, and they make this whole podcast possible. If you haven't yet seen the news, FifthWall recently closed on a Series A funding round. Alongside this, the company has brought on some fantastic new employees at the executive level, and we want you to hear from them. Because not only do they have proven track records of success, but they have a deep appreciation for MSPs and the work you do. So this episode is going to be different than what you're used to, but only a little. We're going into the minds of what drive the new execs at FifthWall and why they are excited about where things are going. I am pumped to share these special episodes with you, and I hope they give you just a little bit of insight into how cyber insurance is going to be a major player in helping MSP partners across the globe scale the wall of cybersecurity. Let's get rolling. Reid Wellock, super excited to be hanging out with you. We don't get to do this very often. You're in Pittsburgh, I'm in New York. But there are a lot of exciting things going on with FifthWall, so why not have an in-person conversation? We've had a couple of episodes now, interviewing some of the new team members, Cole Knuth, Gene Stevens, even a group one with the two of them. But they were coming at this from the tech perspective. And one of the things I really want to hear, and I want our listeners to understand, is first and foremost, kind of you being the insurance guru of the cyber world. What's kind of your thought on everything happening? What's the excitement? What's the trajectory that we're moving in? What's that looking like from the insurance guy perspective?
Well, it's really exciting, and it's good to see you too, Bo.
Yeah, thank you.
We don't do this enough. I think for me, knowing that there's so much opportunity for change, and we're seeing so much change, but not necessarily in the right directions, and we're seeing a lot of validation for some of the assumptions we've been making. So what's really excited for me on the insurance side is it's ripe for disruption. It has been ripe for disruption, and there's a lot of opportunity to provide some consistencies. And I think that's going to come from some different places that folks aren't looking. So for the insurance nerd, I think probably not a lot is going to change from a product standpoint, but how folks access that product, how they get the product, how we change the process, how we change the dynamic, and what we can actually do for the insurance industry by actually doing an MSP first InsurTech. To say I'm excited is an understatement.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because you said there's a lot of change happening in the industry, and that's the cyber world, right? That's been the cyber insurance and the cybersecurity space kind of just by design. Both of those are going to be consistently changing because of threats and emerging technologies and all that good stuff. But what are you seeing? What have you seen over the past 3 years that FifthWall's been in the MSP channel that has kind of said to you, we really need to disrupt the formula? We need to change things up.
I think, in 2021-ish, we saw the hope that MSPs would want to participate in this process. They don't want to just be reactive. They want to be proactive. And so we've seen that consistently. We've seen this as an industry. MSPs want to better understand how to leverage this process, but also participate in it. Because what we haven't seen insurance's perspective really change when it comes to how they view MSPs. And you have some of the carriers that still actually view them as too high of risk to even work with or through, right? So for me, watching the channel develop and watch us move through that channel, get the adoption that we're getting, and continue to get the advocacy from these partners. They want to see change. They want to see us to contribute what we can. But as we've continued to listen and develop our tools, which are for right now very manual, I have not seen anything that is saying that we're not moving in the right direction, right? We said in the beginning that whoever's going to control risk wins. That's been the name of the game. And to get as close to the risk as possible is really, really important, because that's the error we're seeing from insurers. They don't have the ability to get close. It's a supply chain issue. It's a distribution issue. And to not only try to work through MSPs, but have them want to collaborate and have them want to understand and better seize transparency, to adopt the tools that we've been developing. That's been really, really encouraging.
This might be out of left field, and I don't mean to cause confusion here, but if carriers, a lot of carriers are looking at MSPs and they're saying, I don't like this. This is too risky to work with this person. And we're saying, actually, the bridge needs to be there. What's the key to unlocking that partnership between carriers and MSPs? Like, what is going to cause a carrier to look at an MSP and say, actually, you're an asset now, not something that's going to totally destroy my book of business?
We said from the beginning, going back to when we were kicking the tires of what it meant to actually work through MSPs, that it's from a carrier's perspective, it's the devil right? So, there were a couple of events that occurred where they went, oh, wait a minute, this is an aggregation of risk. They're seeing the one to many, and it's way too fluid, which is understandable. But I think the one thing that is remaining true that carriers are starting to understand is that if you're placing business in the SMB space, right, the likelihood of that small business being serviced by an MSP is very high, right? So they're willing to go ahead and insure that client knowing it's being serviced and managed by an MSP, but they're also saying they don't really want to better understand who that MSP is. So in a world of 100 small businesses, the likelihood of you having an MSP be involved with that is, above 80%. We're saying, why not fully understand that 80%? Why not work through that? Work with the party that actually is managing security. So I think carriers are starting to understand that. They're starting to see this is not something you can just avoid. It's something you really should work with, not against.
Sure, you can't ignore the elephant in the room, which is I don't understand what an MSP is doing, so I'm just going to say it's too risky for me.
And also the lack of transparency, because you have folks that really do want to influence positive change. Mm-hmm. MSPs want to participate. They also just want to understand their role in this ecosystem that's still developing. And that's a huge thing. If insurers actually leaned into that, they would have nothing but allies and assets out there that are hopefully creating better risks. And when the inevitable happens, right, you have folks that are boots on the ground that actually understand the rules of engagement. They're trying to manage IR. Insurers are trying to manage claims. This should all be working together.
Yeah. Speaking of that, managing IR, managing claims, we talk about it all the time that your average MSP has their hands in a lot of different things all at once, right? I mean, back in the day, to be an MSP was you were the IT guy for a business. Like it's my outsourced IT guy. And some small businesses still kind of think of it that way, but you can't get away without security now as an MSP. You have to be handling incident response on some level. Maybe the MSP has partnerships to handle that for them, but how do you see this direction we're moving? So I want to kind of shift and focus about that. One of the biggest concerns we get from MSPs is, what am I allowed to do if a claim has to be filed? What am I allowed to do without nullifying the claim? Do you think there's opportunity? And I don't want to necessarily answer that question, but do you see opportunity moving forward right now for better transparency between the carrier, the insurance policy, and the MSP? What's kind of your vision there?
Yeah, and I think when we look at what we want to develop on the tech side, a key component is visibility, right? We want to showcase transparency. We want to showcase both sides of the fence, because you're spot on. How often are we doing talks at events? And Q&A opens up, and I would bet money 10 out of 10 times we're going to get questions around, what do I do during the claims process? And how do I know what to do about that? So I think not just on the IR side and the claim side, I think on front and front and back, right? You've got the front end from an underwriting perspective, like, what does good look like? Where are the carrots, right? So my client wants to do better, but they need to better understand what insurance is actually considering good to be, right? What does good look like? What controls? All those things. But also on the back end, it's understanding what is the carrier actually looking for from an MSP in their participation. And I think when you have that level of transparency, you can actually change the game, right? Because right now carriers are working off of models and processes that are archaic. It's what they've done before for various lines of coverage, how they're going to manage these events. That's a square peg in a round hole for a lot of reasons. And I think if we're actually able to put not all of the cards on the table, but enough cards on the table for all parties to see what's going on, everybody wins. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty, is you can end up with a win-win-win.
Reid, when you started a cyber insurance wholesaler, did you foresee yourself getting this deep into the cybersecurity space?
I didn't even know what cyber insurance was when we started. So I think when I first looked at this, and I had a mentor that said, hey, this whole cyber insurance thing, you should look into it. What I saw was there was a lot of opportunity in the marketplace because everything was so new. Right? There's a lot of green space, a lot of room to move around. And I think we had some assumptions, but a lot of this shaked out because you're just watching some of the knee-jerk reactions when the market hardened, right? You saw carriers do certain things. We said, well, wait a minute. But we also saw what you would assume to be logical evolution and process from someone who's placing bets worth trillions of dollars still not happen, right? And so I think certainly when I started, there were some assumptions, but just watching this unfold, working with MSPs, listening to them, getting their perspective, working with brokers, getting their perspective, understanding an insurer's perspective is very, very limited. We start to see more and more and more opportunity. So we've got new leadership coming in, right? We've got, if we're actually going to make this an insurtech, we have someone that legitimately understands the technical components. We have someone that legitimately understands technology-based business and scaling them, right? We're going to pair this all together and we're going to take all of this feedback and this input that we've been getting over close to a decade, right? And we actually want to put it into action.
What's that journey been like for you on a personal level? So you're looking at this, you're saying, I knew nothing about cyber insurance. Now I'm working with guys who have been majorly successful in the tech space. How do you feel like that's helped you grow professionally? And then when you look at the MSPs who are looking to work with us, I mean, there's that component of saying there's a lot to learn here. There's a pathway, there's a trajectory.
We never want to be the smartest guy in the room, right? You're in the wrong room. And I think when you're working at this level, who you work with is so important. So you can bring a lot of talent, you can bring a lot of expertise into an equation. But fundamentally, you need to be able to really enjoy each other's company, and you need to be able to be just good humans together. And I think that's the biggest thing, is we started to put these pieces together and see the opportunity of folks that would come in. The relationships really started to blossom too. And I got really excited about that because I'm a collaborator, right? I do my best work when I have folks I can work with, right? And I think that's been the biggest thing. And then from a personal growth standpoint, it's really great to have people that have been there, done that, but not take the approach of here's what we're going to do. Not take the approach of this is exactly, don't worry, I've done this before. It's the approach of, yes, I've been through things. I've learned actually the wrong way to do things, right? And let's share that input, but it's still a collaborative effort. And I couldn't be more excited to collaborate.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what I'm hearing. And when I did the conversation with Gene, he talked about the importance of people and the reality that, and I've been surprised by this in the MSP space, getting into the tech world. And I think, coming from my former life in ministry and all that, getting into the tech space, you're like, am I going to be surrounded by a bunch of socially awkward people? What's this going to be like? And all of a sudden I found this honestly, this connectedness of like-minded people who literally were getting into this business because they were excited about helping businesses stay secure. Maybe a lot of them had friends who they initially started out working with, but you saw this collaboration effort on people who it's co-opetition. You have tons of MSPs coming here. Technically, they're competitors. Yeah. But we sat in a room with a bunch of them when we were at Exchange a couple weeks ago, and we heard from different people who technically were competitors, but at the same time, they all were sharing what they were feeling, what they were experiencing, and being able to learn from that. So, I mean, I love hearing that. What excites you about working with Cole and Gene?
Well, I think there's a lot of learning that can be done. And as we talked about before, right? Professionally, I'm excited about them. I'm excited to work with those that have been there, done that. But I'm really excited that, let's use Exchange as an example, because I think, we've really developed a good relationship as at the core of the executive leadership team. And, I've been in this for so long. I feel like at times I felt like I've been in a room screaming, but no one's hearing me, right? So it's really awesome to have people with experience hear your voice and go, yes, I believe you, let's validate, right? And we're going to validate, and now we're collaborating. And in Exchange, something really cool happened because I feel like there is a realization, especially from Gene and Cole, witnessing in real time, right? As MSPs are interacting with us during our speaking engagement at the booth, right? And they start to see it in action. This is just becoming alive, right? The energy is it's there. And I'm honestly really excited to wake up with that energy and collaborate with folks that just have the spirit to want to grow this and create positive change.
Yeah. And, one of the phrases when I'm thinking of creating change, one of the things that I've learned is all you have to do is put a pebble in someone's shoe. I've always used that phrase because it's annoying, but get them thinking about that one issue that, and I know even just walking away from talking with a lot of MSPs, and at first I thought, oh yeah, I totally understand what you're dealing with. Those applications are annoying, but the liability that's on you is scary, right? But then when you really start to get into it and the frustrations of the lack of clarity on what's being asked of them, and the back and forth. There's just all those components. So I feel like we walked away from exchange with things with those pebbles in our shoes, saying, okay, these are things we need to make sure we're addressing. Usually when I wrap up these podcasts, I ask people where they can find out more about you, but I know you leave the LinkedIn stuff up to me. So instead of doing that, what is a little nugget that our listeners can chew on thinking about FifthWall moving into the future? What's something you'd like them to leave with?
Well, yeah, I'm not exactly the most active on social media, but I think for me, what's really important is we've spent a lot of time and energy sharing as much as we possibly can, being as much of an open book about this subject, right? So FifthWall moving into the MSP channel, we've always led with education, and we've always tried to establish that level of trust, right? Because we're trying to democratize something, right? We're trying to create transparency around something. And we're about to disrupt. We're about to create big change. And I know that. And what's really big for me is that I want MSPs to continue to influence what we're doing. It is so important. It's so important that trend stays alive and it continues to influence how we're going to build what we're building. Because the big difference of what we're building is it is MSP first. That's the main thing. And so I think keeping that trust alive, making sure that we're always ears open, as we are going to a stage that's going to be fast development. It's really fast paced. It's going to be really exciting. As a company, I want us to remain, though, who MSPs have learned us to be.
Yeah. Reid, as I've said, it's always a pleasure to be able to sit down with you in person, have a good conversation. Thanks for sharing your wisdom on cyber insurance, and looking forward to what's to come here.
Thanks, Will. This is great.